Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis, along with Pratt Rogers. He comes by every week. We talk a little football. We're not going to talk Georgia. We're going to talk a little ULM, and we're going to talk a lot Mississippi State. How you doing, Pratt?
I am doing good, Stephen. I am doing a lot better after kind of flushing that Georgia game and moving on to ULM.
Yeah, and immediately going to the ULM Warhawks. This is kind of a bring your own energy game that I think the students are going to be leaving early for Thanksgiving. I imagine attendance is this will be the lowest attended game of the year. And that's nobody's fault. That's just kind of where it falls on the calendar and what's coming up.
Yeah, I saw Kiffin tweeting out either today or yesterday, really just over the course of the week, give these guys who are seniors, a round of applause for their last home game, pack out the vault, stuff like that. I'm all about it. I think they may even do some sort of military appreciation.
They've camoed the end zones.
Oh, no way. I didn't see that. I saw that that there was also some facet that if you donated maybe $11 or something, a ticket went to a vet, something along those lines. I'm probably botching that, but for the whole game, honestly.
One interesting thing to me is I was a vet when I went to Ole Miss, and they do a fantastic job with their veteran services. So I'm sure that whatever they're doing, it's at the top of the class of the local vets around universities, whatever that might be.
Yeah, no doubt. I always agreed. Ole Miss always had a great ROTC program. I know it'll be top tier for sure.
So, you are back in Jackson. Just so everybody knows, you've been in the Memphis area for the better part of the last little bit, but you're back in Jackson for your first Egg Bowl. And by the time this video airs, it's Wednesday night. We're about to game week of the first Egg Bowl back in Jackson. How do you think that's going to go? Have you realized exactly what you're walking back into?
That I honestly, I always appreciate the Egg Bowl for what it is. It's always a great game. As we always talk about, usually the worst team ends up winning somehow, some way. They turn it into their Super Bowl, and so be it. But, one thing I have appreciated with Kiffin is a lot less toxicity in this Egg Bowl rivalry. While it's still a really important game, I don't feel that pressure of what it used to be, maybe under the Dan Mullen years and the Mississippi-made Matt Luke mantra. I feel it's a game. It's important. Everybody wants to move on. Everybody wants to win it. But I don't feel levels of almost hatred between the fan base. And being originally from Jackson and moving back, I'm very tuned to this rivalry. My brother went to Mississippi State. I know this rivalry well.
I think this is probably the year, and you can go to the Game Time CO app and get 50-yard line seats in Starkville right now for $80. But I think this is the year that Ole Miss fans probably should go to the game, because historically Ole Miss fans don't go to Starkville and State fans don't go to Oxford. But this is kind of the year to do it. This has a chance to be the revenge for what they did back in 2015, 2016, that time frame. This year is actually the revenge for that. And I think it would be interesting to see a lot of red and blue in that stadium.
No, I do too. And that's funny you mentioned that. I'm kind of 50-50. I'm still in the process of moving and have a lot of moving pieces in my life, so to speak. But I'm kind of 50-50 on going to the game too. I think it'd be awesome. And it would be really cool to completely pack it out in powder blue or something cool like that. I love that. And I appreciate people who travel to the away games. It's not always easy to do, finding lodging, and it's especially in a a smaller town like Starkville may not have all the amenities of somewhere like maybe a Tuscaloosa or something like that, or outside Atlanta and Athens. But all that to say, yeah, I think there's potential this game could be really, really cool for an Ole Miss fan.
Yeah, and honestly, after the game's over, I think the Mississippi State fans are going to flush it pretty quick, because you have to think they're going to hire somebody fairly quickly. And, at that point, like I said, as long as Lane Kiffin's at Ole Miss, it's not going to get to the level it was with Dan Mullen and Hugh Freeze. That's just not going to happen. So, I mean, enjoy the game. Enjoy the revenge, is my opinion, because it is. This is the revenge for 2015, 2016. This is the game when Mississippi State set their house on fire to set ours on fire. This was the game where they're actually having to pay for it.
Yeah, and Steven, look, I'm a recruiting junkie, and I love it. It's one of my favorite facets of college football. But this is a big recruiting weekend as well. I mean, we've talked on this show about guys like Braylon Burnside, Starkville kid. He grew up watching Mississippi State games. He's been on the Ole Miss campus a lot recently. This game really means a lot to a guy like that. I'm not saying this will happen, but if Ole Miss goes out there and hangs it on State pretty good, guys, recruits pay attention to that. That's a real big momentum mover in this state, I believe.
Yeah, and you have a situation with Braylon Burnside. He is signing his national letter of intent at the Under Armour All-American game. That's 50 miles away from my house. I mean, I have that on January 3rd. I'm probably going to be over at that. So it would be pretty cool. Now, it's probably going to be a situation where he actually signs and sends into his LOI or NLI on the day of signing day. And then it just doesn't get announced until he quote signs it, like Davidson Igbeneusen. But yeah, I think this is a pretty good situation. I think Jimothy Lewis is in play again. I don't think JJ Harrell is. I think JJ Harrell, that bridge to Ole Miss has kind of been burned.
Yep, I agree with that. And look, I selfishly wish some of these recruits would start pushing their commitment date, as State's, Mississippi State's in flux right now with whom they're going to hire as their head coach. Kind of gives some of these recruits less time to meet the new guy. And so, the sooner you can lock in some of these commitments, so to speak, for Ole Miss, the better.
Well, this is going to be back-to-back transition classes for Mississippi State. This is one of the reasons I did the video that I did on Tuesday about how Ole Miss can bury Mississippi State, because back-to-back transition years means that you honestly have a situation similar to what Tennessee went through whenever they got rid of Fulmer and then Kiffin did what he did. And you kind of go into purgatory for a little bit. The transfer portal is going to help you out, but you're going to have some work to do, because you're going to have people recruited from multiple different systems. And the new coach that is coming in, let's say they hire a coach by November 30th. Let's just say they hire somebody by November 30th. Yeah. The players have like 3 weeks to establish a relationship with that coach. Yeah, and this year is a lost cause. Now, I'm not saying they didn't need to do it, and I'm not even blaming Mississippi State for doing it. They're kind of correcting a mistake that they made last December. But it still is going to have resounding effects moving forward, and anybody that says otherwise, I mean, you probably just shouldn't listen to them.
Yeah, and look, I agree. You should never make it something as important as a coaching decision based on the guys you do or don't have committed in the class this year. Like you mentioned, you're going to come in and change your system most likely anyway. But great example when you mentioned Davidson Igbeneusen earlier in the show. I mean, his position coach and his kind of head recruiter were no longer in Oxford. He's at Ohio State now and doing a great job. So, I mean, it happens everywhere. It's not just Mississippi State. I do expect that to hit them, unfortunately, pretty hard this year. Same with Texas A&M, obviously. I mean, I feel like every school in the country is on those bandwagons right now. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I sit back and go back and forth about doing a video of kids that I think might be transferring at the end of the year, but I have to be careful with those videos I do because there's certain people like if I do a video explaining the situation with Texas A&M and Lane Kiffin, they think I'm talking about Lane going to Texas A&M. I'm not. I'm just explaining what is going on. So I have to be careful about doing that. And hey, these players might transfer. These are the guys that are on transfer watch because the video you'll get branded as anti-Ole Miss. And all of a sudden they'll send like the positivity mafia at you. And I just don't have time for that.
Yeah, no. And, you know, you don't want – I know it's a small world. You don't want somebody seeing that and almost encouraging them to transfer as well, you know. Yeah. But speaking of transfers –
but it is going to happen. And that situation does exist at Ole Miss as we speak right now. So nobody needs to freak out in December whenever players enter the portal.
No doubt. Look, if it doesn't happen, theoretically, you're not getting better. I mean, because you can only you only have 85 scholarships to play with. So if you're not losing people, so to speak, you're not gaining better players either. So I look at it as a positive 90% of the time.
Okay, I think Zachary Franklin has played in 4 games this year, and he did not play in the Georgia game. Obviously, I'm not expecting him to play against Mississippi State, and I'm not expecting him to play against ULM. And the reason that is I think he's going to try and redshirt this year and just kind of be the dude next year. I think that is his plan. That's the reason Lane Kiffin's kind of talking about it because it might affect him this season. But actually it's going to make them better off next year whenever they could potentially have a Deion Smith and a year 2 Aiden Williams and those guys coming through. The wide receiver room has a chance to be playoff caliber next season.
You know, I couldn't agree more. And honestly, I thought it had that, potential this year. I mean, a lot of the guys that we thought would have meaningful playing time over the last, call it 12 months or so, are no longer on the team, whether it's, Chris Marshall or not getting meaningful playing time either, whether it's Chris Marshall or Zachary Franklin or, obviously Michael Trigg. So, I mean, I thought day one, those 3 guys would probably be some of the most impactful guys on our team. Nonetheless, our receiving corps has been pretty banged up this year too. So I commend Kiffin for what he's been able to do with this group of guys. And I really think we're only going to be better next year. The only con I would even echo for this receiving core this year is wish Aiden Williams had gotten a little bit more PT and kind of shown a little bit more flashes so far, but that's my only con. Saturday
night is absolutely huge for that. Aiden Williams needs to be on the field the whole second half. If Jackson Dart is still playing quarterback more than one series into the third quarter, there's a problem.
For sure.
Period. Anyway, thank you for making the Locked On. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I was just going to say I completely agree with what you were saying. So go ahead, finish up. Yeah, I'm sorry, Stephen. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No problem. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Pratt Rogers joining us. Anything you'd like to add?
No, but if I had to touch on a ULM prediction, I think the spread's 37, something like that. I think we hang a 50 burger on ULM. So that's my prediction. I'll call it 52-10.
Yeah, 52-10, 52-17. That's the difference between covering and not covering. It's man, that's a lot of points. That is a whole bunch of points. But I will talk about my pick. I guess tomorrow I'm going to have Brad Logan on the show, and we're going to give my prediction for the game as well. So, Pratt, thank you very much for stopping by, and we'll talk to you next week, buddy.
Sounds good, man. Thank you.